And welcome to another Fundamentals of 3D Modeling for Games tutorial. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the first part of making a stylized car based on some reference I've gathered from the internet. Now I'm going to break this up into a couple of chapters to make it a little bit more manageable so that there isn't a very large video to watch. And that should make it a little bit easier on everything that we're going to be doing here. So in this first part, what we're going to be tackling is the low poly modeling of the vehicle and trying to get something that looks to be accurate to the reference images. Now, one of the issues with these reference images, and this is what they look like here, is that the like most concept art, this is a very inaccurate drawing. And so what I've decided I'm going to do is I'm going to treat these images here as though they are a two-dimensional representation of the 3D model I've made. So instead of making a model based off these images, I'm going to treat these images as though they were based off my model. So any inaccuracies that exist are in these images and not in the asset I'm creating. The reason for this is that, like all concept art, there are some problems with this. Things like the windshields, it does not match in both images. Things like the hood is not in the same place in both images. And so, to avoid any kind of problems with that, I'm just going to make a more perfect version of the car, and I'll let the inaccuracies lie in this art here. Second, you'll notice that the car is not perfectly symmetrical. There are some issues with it being misaligned in some areas. The driver compartment here, you can see the driver's side is a little bit higher than the passenger side. I'm also going to be doing this, though I'm going to be doing it much later in the development of the car. I'm going to first model the completed car, making it as symmetrical as possible, finally adding these imperfections once the car is done using deformers in Maya. Now, the other thing that I'm going to try and do here is we're going to be working a little bit more intelligently in Maya. And so to do this, I'm first going to set up a project here so that Maya has the ability of tracking all of the files I'm going to be using. This is going to make moving the package or the project that we're working on a little bit easier from location to location. So if you happen to be working on this in the classroom and then need to work on it for homework on another machine, moving your project folder is all that's required. To do this, I'm going to first create a new folder in which I'm going to be storing all of my data. I'm just going to head over to my projects folder and create a new folder here, and I'm going to name this, I'll start with an exclamation mark, and I'll call it stylized car. Now, the reason for the exclamation mark is that this is going to place it, at least alphabetically by name, here as the first item in my list, and I can always go and remove that exclamation mark once I'm done. So that's going to be item number 1. Once I have that done, I can simply head back into Maya, and here I'm going to go down to File, and under the Project Settings, Set Project. Then I can go into my Stylized Car folder and set this as the new project. I'll create a default workspace. And now, if we head into that default folder, you'll notice that there's a default workspace in here. The next thing I'm going to do is head back into the File menu, back into the Project window, and here is a list of all the folders that Maya needs in order to keep everything organized within a project. Currently, my current project is listed as the exclamation mark stylized car. So I'm just going to hit accept. And now when we go take a look at that same folder, you'll see that it's been populated with images, or with folders rather. These folders are all important to Maya and how it saves its data. The first thing I'm going to do is head over to the folder called source images. And in here, I'm going to go and put the two images of my car, the front and side image, that I'm going to be using as blueprints. These were just extracted from the reference image. Now, in Maya, I'm going to go to my front view. I'm going to go to View, Image Plane, and Import an Image Plane. And you can see that I'm already in the right space here. So I'll use the front since I'm in the front. Then I'll go to the side view and go View, Image, Plane, Import, and bring in the side view. The next thing I want to do is I want to bring these things up so that their wheels exist on the ground. So I'm going to go and just raise the images up. I'm doing both at the same time here since the images match one another. And then we'll bring the front image to the back. And we'll bring this side image over as well so that these don't obscure where the car is going to be built. I'm also going to head over to the Channel Box Layer Editor, and here with both image planes selected, I'm going to create a new layer, which I'll go and rename Reference. And I'm actually going to change the display type of this layer to be a reference layer as well, and hit Save. What this is going to do is it's going to prohibit me from actually grabbing or manipulating these images, so they're now locked in space. You can see here we now have a new layer called Reference, and its visibility can be toggled with the V. Over here on the right side, there's a little R. This indicates that this is a reference layer. Okay, now we can actually begin modeling. I'm going to start by creating an image, by creating a plane. Now the plane is already higher topology than I'd like it to be. So I'm going to head over to my attribute editor, head over to Polyplane 1, and I'm going to reduce it down to something a little bit more manageable. In this case, just a singular face. Next, I'm going to go bring that face up and place it towards the beginning of the hood, where the hood meets the windshield, at least in the side view. You'll notice that in the front view, this isn't exactly where that is, and so we're going to get a few things that just don't align here. You can also see that the front of the car isn't necessarily centered within the viewport here. So if I would like to correct this, I can turn the reference layer off and go and move the car over a little bit. I'm going to use the fog lights down here in the center as a better means of indicating where center is. I think that's going to help a little bit more. Okay, next I'll grab my plane, and you can see we're going to be off in the front view a little bit here, or in the side view rather. I think that'll be okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to head into my modeling toolkit, and we're going to start with vertices, and I'm going to grab the two front vertices, and in the side view I'll bring them down to where the front of the hood would end, and I'll just make this match here in the front view. I'm going to alter the shading of this object in both the front and the side view to be X-ray, again, just so we can see through this object. And now I can continue with my modeling. So I'll go to the edges and grab an edge here, which I'm going to go and connect, and then grab the vertices created by that edge and go and place them somewhere in here. I may take this down a little bit. Maybe we'll match the side view. I can go in here and connect again, grabbing another vertice, which I'll go and place up here. And then maybe we'll add two more connections in here to facilitate the curve of this hood. Okay, that seems to match quite nicely, at least from the side view. When I take a look at the front view, we're still nowhere near what the shape of this hood should look like. So the first thing I'm going to do is just move the vertices on the driver's side over a little bit further, and then I'm going to grab the ones that are over on the passenger side, and I'm actually going to set these to 0 and X. And this will put them right along the center line here, and allow me to create my symmetry a little easier. Next, I'm just going to use the vertices that exist, and I'm going to begin moving them over to start capturing a little bit more accurately the shape of this hood. Something like that. I'll select all the horizontal vertices, or edges rather, and I'll add a couple of connections in here as well. this is going to allow me to get a little bit more shape to the curve here that should be here. So I'm going to bring this up, and this up, and this up. And maybe this one as well. And then I want to kind of taper this off a little bit. So I'm going to just pull these ones up a little bit as well, just to try and capture that little bit of a curvature that's there. I'm constantly going to be checking this in my 3D viewport to make sure that the shape I'm creating here is what I want it to be and is looking the way that I want it to look. Okay, not too bad. I think the last thing I'm going to do here is add a single connection to the front in order to just help me get a little bit more roundness out of this fender, just so I can see that quite rounded here. You know, I could bring this out a little bit further as well, just to gain a little bit more curvature. Okay, so that's a beginning to the hood. We're going to have to make the other side, and I also need to make the little bevel that exists here along the center, so we're going to try and take care of that as well. I'm going to use the Multicut tool, and I'm just going to do this here in the perspective viewport. And I'm going to start by clicking on a vertex and then coming up on a 45 into the polygon, like so. And then I'm going to bring that all the way to the back, the last polygon, if I can. And something like this. And again, I'll put that into the vertex at the end here. I'm just going to hit enter to accept these changes, followed by getting rid of my n-gons that this has created. If I defeat the n-gons as they're generated, I won't have to worry so much about cleaning them up later. The other thing that I'm adding is this other vertex that you see here. And what this one is going to do is it's going to allow me a little bit of room here when I create the bevel. And so instead of having that bevel reach all the way to the very bottom of the front of the hood down here and the very back of the top of the hood, I can actually have it kind of taper off into those two locations. So now we'll just clean this up a little bit here. And I'm going to do this by just grabbing these edges and just scaling them against each other. This is going to make sure that they're all nice and level here, at least in the X. They're all in the same location. And then we can go in now and Control-Shift-D to duplicate this with Special, giving me the two sides of my hood, which I'll select together and combine. I'll grab the vertices of this object, and I'm going to weld them together. So we're going to go to Edit Mesh and Merge. And I'm just going to keep stock of the numbers here that I get. So what we don't want to have happen is we don't want to have this go too high and we lose that entire shape that's there. And so I'm going to pull this down a little bit. It's still a little high. Let's try this. There we are. Now, if I want to double check that this merge has happened, I can just double click a single face and it should select the entirety of the hood. I could also, just looking at this thing from the front, grab a single side of this thing and try and move it, and we should get this kind of stretching this gum on the shoe kind of effect here. So that's good. With that selected, I'm now going to go in and grab this center line and just kind of move it up at an angle, like so. And maybe just grab this vertex and bring it down a little bit. And then we're going to see what this looks like. And it is definitely starting to look like, you know, a ridge that you would get in a hood like this. I'm also going to hit 3 on my keyboard here, since we're going to be making a high poly and a low poly version of this. You know, I want to kind of track how good the high poly is going to look. And using the preview, using 3 on your keyboard, will give you a way of checking that. So that's pretty decent. It looks really nice and smooth. I'm going to hit 1 This is going to go back to my default value here so I can see what the low poly looks like again. And with this object done, I'm going to go into the channel editor and give it a name. Now, if I name things as I go, I won't have to worry about coming back and naming them later. So I'm going to call this hood underscore low, with low having no capital letters. Now, what this is going to do, excuse me, well, what this is going to do is allow me to bring this into Substance Painter once we start baking. And that is where we're going to be getting our textures from. And so this naming convention here comes from Substance Painter. Now, you don't have to use that. You can change it in Substance Painter. But I find it a little easier if you just kind of adhere to what the naming convention they've already got in place. And that way you just kind of get used to the way things are. So, with the hood done, we can move into looking at the fender. For the fender, I'm going to begin by creating a torus. The torus here is all kinds of the right shape already. And if I just go and rotate this here using holding the J key down, we'll snap the angles until I get something that's at 90 degrees here. I could also just go type in 90 here. And then what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to go in, let's go rotate this guy 90 again, and spacebar. So what I'm going to have to do now is go and play with the attributes of this torus in order to get it something. I'm going to first make it a little bit lower poly. I don't need it to be that high in terms of its resolution. So something like that is going to work. And you'll notice that here, just out of happenstance, the hole inside the torus happens to be about the right size for that headlight that's there. Though I'm still going to have to play around with some of these values to try and get this thing a little bit closer to the shape that I want. It's not going to work. So I'm looking at kind of two values here. I'm trying to get the roundness of the outer perimeter of the fender, as well as the opening here, matching what we kind of see as the headlight. So that doesn't look too bad to me now. I think we're going to get something here with this. Now, one of the other things I'm going to do, and this is just going to simplify my life a little bit here, if I select the hood as well, excuse me, if I select the hood as well, you're going to see that there are edges from the hood and there are edges on this torus, and we're eventually going to have to get these things all to line up. And I find it just a little bit easier here if I were to rotate the torus until we get a flat edge on top. And this is going to do a couple of things for us. First, that leaves us a flat edge on the side of the fender, which is where the rest of the body of the car is going to come from. So making that already flat is going to make it line up. Second, this tends to line up a little bit better with what we've got going on topologically in the hood. And you can see there's an edge here that these two almost line up, these two almost line up, these two almost line up, and we just happen to have a couple of extra edges kind of in between here. So I find this is, in terms of layout, it's just going to work a little bit better. I'm going to go bring this to the front of the car, and again, you can see how off we're getting here and that things just don't line up. And while I'm in the side view, I'm just going to go ahead and delete the entire back half of this torus. So if we kind of look at this now in the perspective view, you can see kind of where that headlight is going to come from and the shapes we're going to get from it. So now I'm going to go grab the edges here that make up the top, the one edge going towards the hood and then all the way down to the side here on the outside, and just holding shift to enable extrusion, I'm going to move those back until they line up with the end of the fender. So this is going to go right to this line right here. Now, that's not where the hood ends, but that's where the fender ends, and so that's going to be important as well. With that done, excuse me, we can see where that fender is going to end up and how clean we're going to be able to get these things together in a moment. Now I'm going to grab the vertice here. This is the one that ended up where the the end of the fender is, and I'm actually going to need to manipulate the hood a little bit. So if we look at this in the top view, which is over here, you'll see that currently we've got a very flat edge here back along the back of the hood, and in order to get the curvature that we can actually see in the side view here, we're going to want to definitely go in and play around with this a little bit here. And so let's see, I'm going to manipulate this here so that I get that curvature. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to grab the first two vertices on either end and pull them back. And in fact, I'm going to try and get the last one to line up here. And I'll pull these ones in just a little bit more. And I'm going to pull the rest of the hood in here as well. So I'm trying to get a little bit of a curve going here. It's going to look a little bit something like that. And that should give me a better looking windshield once I generate that shape. Okay, I'm pleased with that. Excuse me again, I'm fighting off a cold here, and I've got a little bit of a raspy throat. Been drinking water here as I'm going, but it's only going to help so much. Okay, so again, there are some lines here on the hood that exist in order to help the hood get that curved shape, and those lines are not present in the extrusion that I did here on the cylinder. So I'm going to go and add them in. So here is one, and I'm going to move it up in the front here until it lines up, and then I'll grab the next one. Again, I'm going to hit connect, enter, and go back into my move tool and line this up with the next one. So you can see now here we have edges lining up with where things are going to need to go. Again, because we're going to have to make this fender and this hood eventually merge into the same shape. We don't have a big gap inside the car here where we can see right through into nothingness. We're not going to be making an engine cavity or an engine or anything like that. So it's going to make a lot of sense here to make sure that we don't see inside this this shape. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn on snapping. I'm going to do vertex snapping, and I'm just going to snap the polygon from the back of the fender here up to the one on the hood. And in fact, I'm going to do this one here as well. So what this is going to do is it's going to make the transition from hood into fender, at least at the back, pretty seamless. And then we're going to have to go and do some other things here in the front. I might be able to get away with doing one more of these things. I'm just going to select both of my objects here. This is going to make doing this a little bit easier. Do something a little bit more like that, I think. Yeah, I think that's going to work. And then I can go and start creating more geometry here too. Now, one of the things I'm going to have to do here as well is go and remove a bunch of polygons from the bottom of this thing. So where the torus currently becomes a straightened row of polygons here, so this furthest out edge loop here, I'm actually going to delete everything below that. And in fact, it would probably make sense to carry that up a little bit into the next row, and that would probably include these guys here. And the reason I'm doing this is that I don't actually want this to continue to be the shape of a torus. You know, this headlight shape is going to come out and go straight down here. So if I go and grab these edges and I just hold shift, do this in the let's go to the front view here. So I'm just going to hold shift and bring these down, and what I've done is I've just left this one on the top of the bumper here. This is going to allow me to reposition these things, and you can see how this one would probably make a lot of sense to just go snap it to that hood. And then if I go and grab this vert right here, we can go and position this here. I'm going to try and continue the straight edge along here, and then just put this on where the grill kind of ends. So something a little bit more like that. I'm going to need to put a few more connections in here, so maybe what would be worth doing is bringing this up a little bit and I'll turn that off. I'm going to bring this over here. Or something like that. Again, I'm going to have to dissipate that curvature here as well. But if I go and bring this down and add a connection in here, I can use this connection to kind of help me a little bit more with that shape. So again, it's not going to be exactly the same here as the image. There's going to be some discrepancies here, just because the image is a little imperfect, which happens from time to time with concept art, and so that's not something we're really going to need to worry about. So I'm going to move this guy over here, and we'll try and set these guys up again to try and match that curvature we're getting from the bumper. We'll go and bridge these two together, and that should leave us with a vertex that needs target welding. Now, I've been avoiding target welding this up until now, only because I believe they're not on the same plane. And so I'm actually going to target weld these out in the opposite direction. We're going to go out there, and then we'll go back into edges, and we'll just create a bridge here. So that should start to take the really nice curvature that we're getting from this headlight and start to move it back a little bit into the shape of this thing. So I'm kind of just looking at the edge flow here. I want to make sure that I don't get any zigzags in my edges. You know, you can see this one kind of looks like it dips down and then goes back up again. So this again would be a place where it would probably make a little bit more sense to, you know, continue a straightish line if we can. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to move in here and start to manipulate the shape of the hood here a little bit. So I can see I've got a vertex that lines up beautifully. And that's quite nicely. And you can also see that I'm short an edge here. So it looks like I'm going to need to put what looks like another edge in here. Now here's kind of a funny thing. If I were to go and grab this edge and do my ring selection, you can see that it goes all the way around and ends up back where I'm going to start. So if I were to actually connect this, I'm not actually going to solve my problem. And I'm going to go from one edge matching up to two edge matching up to 3. So no matter what I do here, I'm not going to end up being able to correct that. So I'm going to need to put that new edge into another location here. I'm going to need it to do something else. So this is probably, again, something that would be best suited to the Multicut tool. So I could probably use the curvature here. This could probably use a little bit more shape here as well. And so if I kind of use the Multicut tool like this, I can kind of clean up those shapes a little bit. Go back into my move tool here, and we'll try and just balance this out. Let me turn off my vertice snap, and we'll try and just kind of balance these out a little bit in order to get a little bit of a cleaner shape here. Now this is actually going to contribute a little bit to the opening I'm going to need for this turn signal light here as well. But you can see that this ended up, just by adding this little shape in here, it didn't create any n-gons. I'm still dealing with only quad shapes in here, but it ended up giving me the topology I needed to close up the opening. So with that done, I can go and grab these two edges and their counterparts on the bottom and bridge them in order to close off that shape. So with that done, there's only one more thing we really need to worry about, and that is there's a discrepancy between this object and the hood, where it looks like there should be another edge here, and you know, it looks like I might be able to kind of get away with just manipulating a couple of edges here. Let's see how this works. It might deform the shape a little bit, but I'm going to go give this a try. If I just move this guy down here and this guy down here. So this is starting to skew these shapes a little bit, and you can see that this polygon here is not going to work. I'm going to delete that one and this one. But I think what this might do in the long run is actually give me a little bit more of the shape I'm looking for. In fact, I can bring this guy down and out a little bit here to try and soften the shape that I'm getting there. And again, I just want to kind of look at this from above. And I'm going to make sure I don't get any zigzags here, but I'm getting a nice clean transition from one shape to the next. Okay, that's not too bad. If I grab this vert here and we move him to the next location here, you can see we're going to end up with again, a really nice transition there. And all I'm going to do here is just add another connection, kind of like this, and that's going to work out really nice. I can go in, and if I look at the hood here, I can see I'm going to end up again. There are two vertices or two faces here that are going to need to merge into what essentially is just one here. So that means I'm going to have to add another connection to the hood in here. So something like this. I'm going to make sure that I don't have any snapping on here, and I'm just going to move this guy out a little bit. Again, to try and continue the curvature that's there. So now, that should leave me with two edges here and two edges here, which I can bridge. And I'm going to make sure that we add a division here, a single division to that. This is going to allow me to now go and snap these things together. So this one's going to have to be a target weld, which I'll snap up. And the other one here, I don't want to target weld. These are separate objects. Even though I have them both selected right now and they look like they're one, it is still just a singular object. So I'll move this over here, and that will kind of complete that shape. And I'll turn off my snaps, and I'm going to bring this guy up a little bit. And maybe even this one here. I'm just kind of, again, trying to follow the shape as it comes off the fender and into the hood. Okay, that looks pretty clean. And I'm pretty pleased with that. So it's also giving me kind of the opening here that I'm going to need for the grill. And so it looks like these two vertices can come in a little bit. This will give me that rounded shape that I want to get there. And this is also going to help here with the bumper. Again, I'm going to need to cut some kind of another hole in here in order to put that fog light in. If I do it as a recess, I might just do it as floating geometry. Okay, moving on. Before I can do any more of the side of the fender here, we're going to have to figure out what's going to happen with the wheel well. This giant arch here that's covering the wheel. And so I'm going to make this out of a new object. And we'll do this out of a torus here as well. So I'm just going to rotate it into position. And I'm going to move it into position. Try and line it up with the actual shape I'm getting. I'll scale it up a little bit. And I want to try and figure out exactly how many edges I'm going to need on this thing here. So if I go into the attribute editor under polytorus, again, I'm running with a default of 20 here. This might be overkill, and so I'm going to reduce the subdivisions along the height of this object down to 12. Now this is the amount that go around a cross section of the torus, and so it's going to make the torus slightly lower resolution, which I think is going to work quite nicely. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove all the faces that are not going to be a part of this wheel well. There's no point in keeping them here only to delete them later, so I might as well clean them up now, getting rid of anything that isn't going to be a part of this shape. And what this is going to do is just limit the amount of polygons that I'm dealing with here. So you can see that's already starting to become a little bit more wheel well-like. We'll go into the object mode and move this over. Now, even though you can see the wheel well doesn't stick out that far in this view, I'm going to try and line this up here with the vertices from this. So I can even go and, if I wanted to, grab this vertex here and see its X position, which would allow me to go put that X position here, and you can see I'm already right there. And then I can go and just delete the entire inside of this. So again, this is going to make this wheel well stick out a little further than what's in the image. But again, I'm going to feel like this is a little bit more accurate to the shape in the side view than what's in the front view. And so again, I'm kind of making a creative license decision here to manipulate the shape in order to get it to look, again, more like what this looks like than what this looks like. The next thing I'm going to do is remove a entire row of polygons from the inside here. And these are, again, the ones where the torus is starting to taper back in. So if I look at this from the front again here, this shouldn't have actually changed any of the width. And if I look at it from the side view, you can see that it is starting to manipulate my shape a little bit. It shouldn't be too bad. So I'm just going to go and grab these edges, and holding Shift, I'm going to extrude them down. And I'm going to hold Shift and drag them down again. This is going to start making the inside part here of the wheel well. And then to try and get these guys to line up a little bit more, I'm just going to move them in to look something a little bit more like that. And then these guys here too, you can kind of start shifting these to fit that wheel well shape a little bit further. Once we get to the front here, instead of trying to move these things, I'm just going to switch back over to my trusty old multi-cut, and I'm going to start trimming this thing all the way down like so. And this is going to, again, give me some more polygons or some more faces here that I can delete that don't appear to be a part of this shape, and will give me a much cleaner looking shape to this fender here, or this wheel well. And so yeah, something a little bit more like that, I think. I'm going to start moving some of these edges a little bit closer to the actual image here, and just bringing them down to where that ridge of the wheel well ends. Something like that. Again, I'm going to constantly be going into my other views here. I want to make sure that what I'm doing is not destroying anything or manipulating anything in the wrong way. So it's starting to look correct. The only other thing that I can see that's really an issue here is going to be the very front. And I can see that from the front view of this thing, that these edges should actually start following the curvature here of the fender. So to do that, I'm going to start grabbing some of these edges. I'm going to do this in this view here so I can see what I'm doing. And all I'm going to do, I'm just going to hold Shift and again extrude these inward a little bit. And this is going to start giving me essentially the entire inside of this wheel well. I'll go to vertices, and I'm going to start now placing these things in a position that's going to make a little bit more sense. So I'm going to move this one up here and this one up here, and you can see what's going to happen here. These are going to kind of just disappear into that shape. This one can go right up here like so, and then I'll move this one in, and maybe we'll even move it up a little bit. Let's try and accommodate that shape a little bit further. And again, I want to just double check here that I'm not destroying anything, which does not appear to be the case. There are some faces here, which happen to be on this object, which I can delete now. As I can see, they are not anything I'm going to need. And I'll just grab a couple of vertices here and move them up and connect them to where I had placed them, like so, giving me a really nice transition now between that fender and the wheel well, as it were. Okay, now I need to continue my matching game here to make these things line up. Now this vertex here, which is on the wheel well, this one's a really easy one to match. It's actually on a completely flat face. So I'm going to move it up to this guy, and that'll be the same thing for this one down here, if I can find it. There it is. So this one too is going to match there, giving me a really nice clean break between these two objects. I'm going to have to go in here and add a connection and delete, whoops, the connection, enter, and delete the face here on the bottom. And the reason I'm doing this is just to kind of follow the flow of this shape a little bit further here as well. Now, I don't necessarily want to have a triangle in there, but I can always go and do this, add a connection in here, and if I turn off my snaps briefly, I can go and just realign this a little bit further in order to connect it. Okay, so what that will have done will have shifted the triangle now into being a group of quads that kind of follows the front of this fender all the way down. You can see it's giving me a little bit more of a rounded shape in there. I'm going to turn off my grid here. I like to look at this thing from underneath in some places, and that's becoming a little detrimental. So I can move this guy up here, and I now have, again, essentially a triangle that I can go and bridge up. So if I take these two, bridge, oh, I cannot bridge those. So what I'm going to do is just a little bit of a trick here. Instead of bridging, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold shift and extrude this guy, which is going to give me a larger than I want polygon. But what I'm going to do is I'll just target weld one of its vertices back to itself, like so. And then this guy, again, we're going to use the vertex snap on him, and I'll put him there, and that will have created that triangle for us. So I just want to make sure, I'm just looking at this here now, and I need to make sure that I keep this edge in here, even though I've gone and made it quads. I need it to be there. And the reason I need it to be there is that there's a difference between fender and wheel well here, in that these faces here, these two here, are actually part of the fender and not of the wheel well, and everything else is part of the wheel well. And so that edge, even though I'd gotten rid of it by making another row of polygons here, it turns out I'm still actually going to need that face, that edge separating those faces. And yeah, that looks like it for the wheel well. I'm going to go back to the fender now, and I can obviously see there's a few places here where I'm going to need some more edges. Looks like if I go from here all the way along and connect, we'll add 1, 2, and 3 connections here. So connect and 3. I'll hit enter to accept my changes, like so. And now I can actually go and snap these guys. So again, I'll turn on my vertice snap, and we'll grab this and move it up, and grab this and move it up, and grab this and move it over. And that'll now actually make the fender meet the wheel well all the way around. And in fact, I can take this one, and I want to move it there. I actually want to move it straight down to there, which will actually give me a really nice connection that way. Now, it'll probably make it a little easier on me if I do it this way, and then just build out a new shape here again, and target weld this guy in, turn off my target weld, go to vertice snap, and go and move this guy down here. That just doing things in the wrong order or the opposite order ended up giving me a nice closure on this shape here. Now, I've got a lot of wasted topology in here, a lot of stuff, a lot of edges going all the way around. You can see they don't end up meeting anywhere on the hood, indicating to us that they are not necessary. I don't want to add them to the hood. That is an unnecessary addition to the shape of the hood, and so I will not be doing that. What I'm going to do instead is essentially just kind of get rid of them here. So if I go into my target weld, I can bring this one forward. Let's make sure nothing is selected here. So I can bring this one forward and this one back, and that'll kind of clean those up a little bit. So if I show you how to get rid of this, I'm going to go to edges, double click, and we'll get this one as well, and I'll just control backspace to remove those. And yeah, now I've got a couple of triangles in here that will facilitate that shape a little bit better. And now, you know, I'm probably okay with putting a single edge in here like so, in order to try and hold that shape a little bit better. And that's not nearly as bad now as it was a moment ago. So that's pretty decent in terms of the shape that we're getting. These two objects, though, the wheel well and the fender, I am going to merge these together in order to, again, just make this a little bit cleaner. So we're going to go and combine, and I'm going to grab all of the vertices that are here. Let's grab the whole thing. I'm not sure what I've left welded and what I haven't. And so we're going to go to Edit Mesh and Merge here again. And I'll hit Enter. And again, I'm just going to double click, make sure that everything is selected. Another good way of checking to make sure whether or not your weld has occurred is just go into your high poly preview with the button, the 3 button. And you can see this is giving us a really nice rounded shape here. Actually a little too rounded in where those shapes meet. And so when we do the high poly, we're going to have to actually do something else here to separate those a little bit further. But you can see these are going to look really, really nice together here once they're actually merged. So yeah, that's looking pretty solid. I'll bring these back down to their low poly versions, and I'll kind of keep continuing what I'm doing here. So if I go look at this from the side, we're all the way back to where the fender is. Now, one of the things that's happening here on the side of this thing, you can see this in the in this view here. These vertices here are actually forward. If I take this one and I turn off my snaps and I move it forward here, you can actually see in the reference image there is a triangle here. This is probably an indication of where the this joint in between the windshield and the driver's side window is going to come from. And so I'm going to put that triangle in there. I think it's going to be important to me in a bit. And I'm going to bring this vertice back and back a little bit further here. I'm trying to continue the shape of the windshield's curve by doing this. Now this shouldn't be an issue here because all of these things are kind of on the same planar surface at the back here, and so there really shouldn't be too much of an issue moving these things. But again, I want to try and make sure I don't get too much zigzagging in my faces here. Try and keep them as planar and as clean as possible. Speaking of the windshield, why don't we go and add that in next? So here I'm going to grab just on 1/2 of my windshield or 1/2 of my hood, the edges all the way at the back. I'm going to hold shift and drag them up until they match where the windshield ends, at least in height. Somewhere about there. And we're going to separate these off of the hood here now. So I'm going to go to Edit Mesh, and we are going to detach these. This is going to make them separate. And then once they're separate, we can separate them, and they will now be their own group, their own set of polygons here. Which again is going to allow me to get a cleaner bake once we get our normals done or get to that stage. So this is going to be the first group of polygons from the windshield. I'm going to go to my front view here. And again, I'm going to leave this perfectly flat along the top. And we're going to add that curvature once the entire car is done. And what I'm going to do here now is I'm just going to hold shift and drag this thing out 3 times. And what that 3 times is going to give me is, I'm going to move these ones in here a little bit further. is just going to be a little bit more of a allowing me to arc this in here a little bit. So I'm going to bring this one up here, and this one in here, and this one out here. Now I'm going to bring these past the windshield and into the little ridge that goes around it. And then I'm going to do the same thing with these ones. I'm only doing this from the front, so this is going to look really wrong in some of the other views here, but it is going to help me capture that curve of the windshield, which will make it look correct. So if I look at this from the top view, I'll be able to see that that is really wrong, and that these need to continue going back, and that these two will need to go back, and that these two will need to go back. Again, to kind of continue that curvature all the way along. In fact, this guy here could probably, maybe we'll move him as well. But anyway, I'm looking at these in multiple views here. I want to make sure that from every possible angle I look at this from, I'm seeing that windshield arc in the right direction. So I'm looking at it from above here and trying to make sure that it does indeed arc the right way, that it's curving from both the above direction, it's going around that corner, and from the front I'm getting that rounded shape, and from the side we should get that same rounded kind of view. Okay, that's not bad like that. I'm going to do a little bit more manipulation here of the fender. So I'm going to move this vertice back and this vertice back. That one, I don't like where that one's going. Okay, we're going to leave that one for now. I just wanted to do that, and again, just to ensure that I've closed up the gap here. So now, I'm going to go and, let's see, let's add an inset to this thing, or an offset. So this is going to come in like this. This is going to give me the little border here that's going to go around the windshield. But in doing this, Maya's gone and created too many polygons. So you can see there are multiple polygons here in the same area. So this just, it capped the hole at the back. And so by just going in and deleting those extra faces, which includes this one, I'll be able to get rid of what I don't need. And then, let's see, we're going to scale this guy. And in his position, put him to the origin here, back to 0 in X, which should allow me to duplicate the windshield and combine it. And grab my vertices. So I've got 8 here, and again, we should only have 4. So I'll merge, and there are now 4. The next thing I'm going to do is extrude a little bit of a shape around here. Maybe something like that. That's probably a little thick. Maybe something a little bit more like that. This is just going to become the little bit of rubber or foam or whatever you have it that circulates the window, keeps it in place in the car. So if you actually look at the reference here, you can see that there is kind of a little bit of a bead that goes all the way around the windshield. So that's what I'm going to try and treat as that shape. Okay, now I do have a few more shapes here. So I'm going to go into my attribute editor, or rather my channel editor, and we're going to rename these. So this is windshield underscore low, and this is going to be Fender underscore low. I'm going to end up with 2 fenders. I'm going to end up with a driver's side and a passenger side. However, they are far enough apart from one another that once I have 2 of them, they shouldn't interfere with each other when it comes to the baking, when it comes to the geometry. So I'm hoping I'll just need Fenders underscore low. And we'll see how that works. Okay, the next thing I want to make is the little pipe here that's going in between the passenger side or the driver's side window and the windscreen. I'm also going to need to make the door and kind of just keep working my way backwards here. I think I'll start with the door. I think once I make the door in the driver's side window, the gap in between that and the windscreen here will actually give me the shape that I need to make this little pipe here. So I think that's kind of the easiest thing to do. So for this, I'm going to go into my side view, and we're going to go into edges here. I'm going to grab the edges from this guy and make sure that these are all planar edges. I want them all to be all nice and aligned. In fact, I'm going to just scale them here to make sure that they are naturally aligned. I'm just going to move them back a little bit further too. I don't want to mess up the curvature that I've got going on here. And then this is going to be a fairly easy thing. Actually, I am going to bring them back here. So I'm just going to hold Shift and drag these all the way out the length of the car door. So something like that is going to work quite nicely. And then I'm going to have to take this one, and I'm going to hold Shift and drag it up here as well. So this should be in line here with the top of the door. So that is about where I want that. And if I go to the front here, this should be aligned with this guy. So this vertex here. So what I can do, I can go to vertices here. I'm going to turn on my vertex snaps. Vertex snap is not going to work. So what I'll do is I'm just going to grab, it's the Y and the X information that I need. So 315, and I'll copy 416. So this one and this one, 315 and 416. And that should get them to line up. And you can see it actually did not here. So I'm going to get this kind of as close as I can get it here. And we'll just zoom in an awful lot. Close enough. So there's that little triangle. This is what's going to create the... and we'll just get rid of this one. That's what's going to create that shape. That is going to become the beam that's here. Now, judging by where I've got the windshield already, none of this is going to end up working the way that I want it to, and I'm going to end up having to move where that object is. However, I think it's still going to work. So I'm going to grab the polygons of the door. Now note this does not include the very bottom polygon here. And I'm going to go to Edit Mesh and Detach, followed by Separate, which is going to give me this object here as being the door underscore low. And I can actually go and put in some of the other features that are here. So there actually is kind of a raised ridge of sorts that runs along the door. I already have an edge in place here. This is coming from the edge from this object here. This is going to prove to be useful, but it's not the only edge I need. And so I'm just going to go and create another edge that I'll bring down to where that dark edge is. And then I'm going to need to, on the fender here, essentially add another vertex here. So this is not, again, an issue because I do have, something close by that I can connect, and it won't cause too many problems. So that's going to be about the door. If I go and yeah, that looks pretty decent. Okay. So let me start looking at, before I can do anything with this corner here, I'm going to need to start generating that little beam that should be there that follows the shape of the door here. So I think the easiest way to do this, or at least what's coming to mind first, is going to be going into my side view. I've got the windshield selected here, and I've just grabbed one of its edges. You can see that we're not really entirely lined up here, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold Shift and drag this back until the thickness kind of matches. So what this is going to do is, this is essentially where that beam is going to be. I'm going to take this polygon and I'm going to extrude it like so. This is going to give me the thickness that I want that piece to have. And then I'm going to go split this off the windshield. So again, this has no purpose in being part of the windshield here. So I'm going to go to Edit Mesh and detach this and separate it just so that it's its own piece here. And then what I can do is I can actually use this piece as a means of continuing the mesh here. So essentially, if I take this beam that exists as a gap here between the two windows, and I just kind of continue modeling with it. So I'm going to hold Shift and drag this down, and I'll go to vertice mode, and I'll turn my vertex snaps on here, and this one is going to go up here. This one, we'll turn off the snaps now, is going to go forward. And I could probably bring this back a little bit. Something like that. And before I really know where that one's going to go here, I'm going to just make another extrusion. And we'll go move these vertices into place. So you can see that's going to essentially correct or complete the shape that was there. So I'm just going to move this out a little bit. And now it looks like that beam kind of curves and goes around the window, which is quite nice. I'm going to do the same moving back here that I did there. It was a pretty harsh angle. And we'll go and delete this face here too. And this is all going to kind of merge into, you can see there's another lip that goes around here with the lid. And so that should be a fairly easy thing to do. Next, I'll take this guy, and I'm just going to hold Shift and drag him back. And I'll take these two and bridge them, which will close off that shape. So now I can take this vertice and this vertice. I don't necessarily want this to close in here, but I can start bringing these down and eventually mesh them in to where the door meets. So it looks like I'm going to need to bring this back. I don't think I need it as far back as I had it. In fact, maybe we'll just vertex snap this one down. And that'll complete the door coming out of the fender. I'm going to need to put a seam in here to show that those two things are different. But now what I can do, pardon me, is I'm just going to grab the edge here and bring it back. And if I go into my vertice snap here again, I can snap that one there. I'm just going to move this one back a little bit to match. So 3.04, and move this one into the same position, like so. And that'll kind of be a little bit of the top of the driver's side door. The window will go up from there. So now that I've got that kind of completed, I can see what I'm going to need to do here, which is just take this shape and bring it straight back and merge these two things. We'll bridge, close them off, and say OK. And then I'll just grab my new edge here, and I'm just going to slide it back too, just so that shape isn't so harsh. So that works like that. If you look at the front view of this thing here, though, you can see that there actually is like a straight line going down here. And I think what I'm going to do in order to create that shape is I'm going to use that as the where the rear view mirror is going to connect here. And so I'll build that rear view mirror kind of out of the door here. I mentioned I do need to put a seam here, and this is going to be the same thing that's going to happen with the hood. Once all these things are high poly objects, you can see that there's a little bit of cleanup that's going to need to happen here as well. But once these things are all high poly objects, what happens is you start losing where one object ends and the other one begins. You know, you can see there's a little bit of a seam here. This is actually because, again, I have the wrong number of vertices here lined up in these objects. But we're actually going to have to make those kind of little artificial gaps in here in order to make these things look a little bit more like the real deal. Okay. The next thing that I want to do, I don't really like what's going on down here. If I look at the car here, the reference image, there's a highlight that runs along the bottom of the door, and this is an indication to me that that door actually flares out again. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the polygon on the bottom of the door, followed by extruding this one backwards, like so. And what I'm going to do with that, let's try this again here. Yeah, I think that'll work. Is we'll delete that polygon and delete this polygon, and that should be perfectly aligned. So what I'm going to do here is grab the door. Let's view this from the top. I want to see which one is straight and which one is not. So it looks like the door is straight and the jamb is not. So I'm going to grab these, and they're going to move over until they are nice and aligned, and we'll just scale them here nice and aligned as well, and find out where these guys are in Z. That's negative 1.37, and I'll line these guys up to the same place, and that should essentially give me the almost what's going to appear to be that highlight. It is a little bit square for my liking, and so I'm going to round this off. And the other thing that I'm going to use to round this off is I want to make this corner a little bit rounder on here too. And so if I go in and just grab these two vertices and connect them, and then grab this edge and this edge and this edge, yeah, I think that might work. I'm going to go and bevel these, and we'll just bring that fraction up here until they're actually quite a bit rounder, like that, which is going to give me a little bit better of a highlight there, and it'll actually kind of aid in completing this shape a little bit here as well. With that done, I've got some end-gun cleanup that I want to do here. So here we're going to go to target weld, and that won't matter so much if I do that. I think what I'm going to need to do is connect this to this in order to get rid of that end-gon that was there. And there are no other end-gons here. That is all nice and clean. And you can see that's giving me a much more rounded shape here. The only other thing that I might do here, just to clean this up a little bit better, is add a new edge here and remove the ones on either side, like that. And the only reason I'm going to do that is it's going to give me 3 quads instead of 2 in a triangle. And again, I'm just going to soften the transition here between these pieces, looking for zigzagging edges. So there, that'll give me the jamb at the bottom of the door. Again, I'm going to need to put an artificial gap around the door here. That'll be kind of important, but for now, this is going to work quite nicely. Now, I can also take this into creating the rear fender and also the corner panel here at the back. This is all going to kind of come together into another shape. But before I get there, I want to continue with, actually maybe I will do that now. I'm just looking at the next window jamb here, and it actually appears to be part of the back and not the door. So that'll be helpful too. Okay, so let's do that then. Let's grab the edge from the door, and we'll do this in the side view so we can track it. And I'm going to hold shift and bring it back again until it just matches where this wheel well is. So something a little bit like that. And I can remove this one and probably this one, and I'll hold shift and bring this back, and I'll remove that one, and maybe we'll just come up to here. And so I want to kind of just make these match a little bit. I'm going to need to put another cylinder in here, or sorry, another torus. That's going to match the design and shape of this one. So another torus. And this torus, I'll do this from the side view here. We'll come over here. I'll go to rotate, and I'm going to hold J down to snap it. And we'll scale it up. Again, I'm going to go into the axis here and bring that down. Again, just so that it matches the one on the front. And we'll scale it up and put it in position here. Quite round. If I go to my front view, I should be able to also align this quite nicely to where that one is, which will give us that rear shape quite nicely. We can then go in and, again, start removing any polygons we are not going to need. So this is going to be fairly easy to do here by just removing this center line. None of these exist. And I can even probably go in and grab this and delete all the way along here. Like so. And then from the front, we'll grab the inside half and delete it. And that's going to give us that rear wheel well. Again, I'm going to need to use my my multi-cut in order to start shaping this a little bit closer to the shape of this proper wheel well here. So I'm actually just going to stop there. I'm going to have to move this vertex, but I think that'll work. And then we're going to start arcing these ones around. Let me hit enter here. And I'm going to start arcing this one around here too. And out here. There. Okay, so what this is going to do, again, help me to identify some polygons that I won't need. Like so. And again, kind of delete anything that is unnecessary. And then I'm going to grab, actually, I'm going to get rid of these two. I like the way this worked in the front, where I just grabbed the edges here that weren't in use, and holding shift just drag them down, which again, once we start getting into these two shapes here, it's going to allow this stuff all to merge together really nicely. Okay, so that, and I'm just going to bring another extrusion here down, and that, and then I'm going to go in and start adjusting some vertices here to get these to line up a little bit better with the actual shape that I should be getting out of this. Now, being that this is a fairly cartoony car, you know, there's a lot of imperfections that are being made here. You know, if this was something that was going to be a very realistic car, you definitely wouldn't have a lot of the little pushing and pulling that I'm doing on vertices here. You're going to need to be a lot more accurate in terms of how things are positioned. But because this thing is cartoony and there isn't a lot of exactness in its design, it gives us a little bit of leeway in terms of what can be done and the shapes that we're going to achieve. And so that's kind of freeing a little bit in terms of, you know, making something as complex as this, which is quite nice. I'm just going to go delete that polygon. While I'm here, I'm going to start creating the rear of this corner panel. And I'm going to do that by just grabbing these edges. which all appear to be part of that corner panel. Actually, probably don't need that one. And from the side view, here, I'm going to use scale and shift, and I'm going to scale these things out as an extrusion, which should have held them to a nice angle here, but it didn't really. Just to try and capture a little bit more of the shape that's here from this thing. So I'm going to try and keep these edges going in straight lines here. That one's quite nice. This one's going to have to come up, and this one's going to have to come up. This is where this thing's going to disappear here under the bumper. Out there. And then this one, I'll probably just delete that. We're going to have to do something else with this altogether. The idea here is that this made a fairly straight line here out of this. And what I want to do is find out in X where this guy is, which is 315. And then if I go and just grab these guys here again and put them at 315, it's going to line them up to that line on the car. Then, if I add a connection in here, you can see my reference layer here is getting in the way. I can kind of go and pull this up and out a little bit. Let's hide our reference layer for the hide our reference layer for the moment. This is going to allow me to capture that curvature quite nicely. And so I've just gone in and moved this thing kind of up a little bit like that. And then again, I'm going to go to my side view here, and I want to go and reposition these vertices again to lose that zigzag that was there. And try and keep those in straight lines. Angling back. This one too can just come straight down. In fact, I can just go and scale all these guys. And that's going to give me now this really nice kind of rounded out corner panel here that's following exactly in the shape of this object. Okay, I'm going to need to separate the corner panel from the door here. So again, this is the entirety of the door. And these guys are not important here. These ones are. So we're going to go to Edit Mesh and Detach and Separate. And then this and this are going to get combined. Like so. Next, I'll go into my edge mode here. And let's see. I'll take these two and these two. And we're going to bridge. And I'm just going to remove that line. And then I'm just going to move this guy forward here. Or backwards, rather. Like so. And again, I'm going to use this other little connection here that exists as a means of just continuing down that corner panel. I can also see now kind of how things are going to connect in here a little bit as well, which is quite nice. So if I go into my target weld, I can, let's make sure there's nothing selected. I can target weld these guys kind of up and into the, into the right place here now. Really? There we go. And this one can come down here. And this one will go over here. And what that'll do is it'll start cleaning up my shape for me. This is planar here, so I don't really have to worry about too much here. Now I do want to remember that those are actually part of a ridge that's coming straight out of this thing. And so that might not be the best place to start arcing here. In fact, this might make a little bit more sense. So I'm going to grab, let's see, let's find out where and why this thing is. 252. And we're going to move these two guys to that exact position. Just so that it straightens out where I'm going to have my bevel here. So scale them up this way and this way. And that'll actually help me. That's where I'm going to put that ridge through there. And then we can delete this polygon, followed by a bridge. And same deal here. I'm going to have to add another connection, followed by a bridge. And this one won't allow me to bridge because it's a triangle, but I can just go and target weld this guy back in. Hate when that happens. There we go. I can't see that one. And that'll now allow me to get that place in there a little bit cleaner. Again, I want to get rid of some of the waste here while I've got it, but before I do this, I don't know how much of it is waste. So I'm going to bring my reference layer back. So this edge here is going to be of importance. I'm going to build the this beam out of this edge, so I do want that to be there. However, this edge does not appear to be of importance, and so if we were to go grab these guys and connect them like so, this edge now serves no purpose, and once gone will allow me to get a nice cleaner shape here. In fact, I could also soften this up a little bit here too. I don't need these all to be where that lip is going to go. I'm essentially just going to build it out of this polygon right here. And so it doesn't really matter if the other ones are aligned. It's something like that I think is going to work. I'm going to extrude this guy out like so, and make him planar as well in Y, or in Z rather, and go place him where the other one here matches up. Excuse me. A little more water on the fire. Okay. So yeah, so if I go and find out where in Z this is negative 1.37, and I go back to this one and grab that polygon here again, 137, that should make those two things planar, which is nice. And I'm just going to delete that polygon, followed by rounding the edge. I'm going to try and do the same thing in the back here that I did in the front. And so I'm going to have to create another edge that's going to go down into this corner here. And I don't even think I really need to do that. I think if I just grab these two and drag them up, I think that's going to serve essentially as the rounding that I wanted to have. So if I just grab this edge and bevel it and try and get the values here to be about the same, about there, that will serve as a good enough place. So first things first, I'm going to grab these two objects and combine them so that I can grab these two polygons, make sure that it is just the two, and scale them down. And I'm going to grab the ones on the bottom and I'm going to scale them down. And then this face here, if I grab its X position, 4.25, I can move that one. And if I grab this thing's Y, 0.45, and these two little guys can come up. And then I'm just going to scale these in here. Again, to make everything nice and planar. And we've now got some n-gons that have been created here from the manipulation of this. So I'll target weld this one in here. Don't do that. Target weld this one in here. And I'll bring this one back here. And that is, again, creating an n-gon here of sorts. So we'll just take this and this, and I'll connect them. And that'll give me, essentially, the corner panel. And nice and connected via the fender here, so if we ever wanted this door to open, you know, it's already kind of set up in that way. Okay, quite nice corner panel. I can now go and grab this thing, which I mentioned I was going to use as the beam coming up from here. So I'm just going to bring that straight up, like so. And we'll check this in the front view here. And this is going to have to lean in a lot. Something of that nature. Now I do want to be careful here when leaning this in. While I'm adhering to the front image here, and that did look good, I can see what's going to happen between this shape and this shape is I'm going to end up with a window that is bent. I'm not going to end up with a flat planar piece of glass, which never looks good. So we're definitely going to have to make some changes here to that in order to make it look good. Now I know where the window is going to come from. It's going to be behind this line here. So it might be worth going in and taking the edge from here and moving this back until the point that these two things are now in the same place. Which is going to create a heck of a gap in here. But again, I think once that windshield or the rear view mirror is there, it won't be so bad. But yeah, we're going to end up with a very large kind of divot that happens here. So I might even go and bring some of these other shapes in a little bit to kind of help compensate for this a little bit. Okay, let's continue modeling here. So essentially, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find out the best way to do this here is going to be just to make a planar shape for this glass, put it in position, and then line all of these things up to it. So why don't we do that? I'm going to make a plane, and since this plane is already the shape of the glass I want it to be, that's going to make it a lot easier to make everything else adhere to that. So here is that plane, and I'm just going to rotate it 90 degrees, like so. And what's important here is that I do not want to, for any reason, to move vertices without having more than two of them selected. So what this is going to do, I'll grab these here and bring them to the front, or bring them to the side. Here are the top two, and I can bring those up to about where that top begins. And then on this view, I'm going to bring those same two in. There's something like that. The reason I want to do this by twos is that what that's going to allow me to do is make sure that this window stays planar. So here I'm going to move this, but I'm just going to move it in a just straight back. This is going to prevent the window from shearing, so I'm going to end up with a perfectly planar piece of glass if I do this. So as long as I'm moving these kind of two vertices at a time, this thing will always be at some point completely planar. And the nice thing about that is it means I can actually line up everything else on these other components here. On these guys, everything else can just line up to the window, which will be quite nice. So again, I've kind of got a weird spot here where I can see things are not going to line up the way that I want them to. I'm going to have to do this little lip here. This probably means that I've got the windshield, or the driver's window, a little higher than I'm going to need it to be. So I'm going to bring it down to here. And again, I'm going to reposition it in my front view. Try and keep it aligned. Again, moving two vertices at a time to make sure that this thing stays planar as I go. And I can see here too where these guys are going to have to come back. And again, if I want to find out exactly where they're going to go, you know, I just need to grab these two vertices and make sure that they're planar, and find out where they are, which is 3.04. So if I grab these guys and put them at 3.04, and again, make sure that they're planar. Looks like we're just not quite there in terms of the decimal points, so I'll just manually move this back here. Again, just moving two at a time should ensure and turn on my vertex snaps. Now, this is not going to be two at a time here, but I'm going to move this one, and I'm going to double click on my move tool, and you can see I've actually got my more exact position here, and so I'm just going to go and copy that and paste it in here. That is world orientation. That was not exactly what I wanted it to be. Let me go look at this in the front here. No, I need the windshield. So again, I need these things to line up exactly. And I'm not getting enough decimal points out of this. Let's see, 180, 416, 304, 304. Let's turn off the snaps here. 180. Come on. Four 416. All right. Well, that should get them lined up enough here that we don't end up with a little bubble. I think I might put a little ridge along the door here too, just to hide the fact that the window is not exactly where I would like it to be. Okay, so with that guy in place, move this one forward here too. What I'm going to do now is start snapping some vertices from this guy into the right place. And I'll do this one too. And this is just going to ensure that I end up with these things kind of exactly where I want them to be. Which is going to just make things a little bit easier. Okay. Now I want to build this this top lip around the roof here, and I can see that it's actually a fairly straight piece. You can see that from the side view here, the windshield's got no round whatsoever, but from here it totally does have a round. And so I think what would be a lot easier to do would be to build that little area first, and then again make everything else here match into it. Which I think would be the easier way of doing this. So let's do that. Let's see what's going to be the easiest way of doing this here. Maybe what I'll do is I'll start off with the edge here from the windshield. And maybe what I'll do is I'm going to hold Shift and drag it back like so. Just creating a further back area here. And then I'm going to extrude it up to create the rest of the shape of this thing. And I think that's going to work quite nicely. So here I'm just going to go and delete the polygons on the side. And if I grab these guys and just snap them into place, like so, that should make that piece line up. And I feel like that window is very far in. So it might be worth moving this entire windshield in a little bit further. So let's try that. In order to do this, I'm going to delete 1/2 of it. This is kind of a edit here in terms of what's necessary. And so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to move this back until it lines up with where I want it to be, which looks to be about here. I'm just looking at the thickness from the windshield out, and I think that's just going to make a heck of a lot more sense. Okay, now with that being in the right position, I'm going to now go make some edits to this. Starting with this vertex, I'm going to turn our angle snaps on here, and it's going to come back. And this one is going to go match it. This one is going to go to the next one, and that one's going to match it. I think that's quite nice now. In fact, I think I'm just going to delete this piece altogether. What is that? There. And the reason I'm doing that, deleting, is that it's actually just going to be easier now that I've got this thing built, to do it that way. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to delete all this stuff that I just built here, and I'm going to go and remove, again, all these vertices or these edges that I don't want selected here. And I'm going to do exactly what I just done a moment ago. I'm going to hold Shift and drag these back to extrude them, giving me the shape that I'm going to want from this, followed by going into the polygons and extruding them out to give me the little lip. And I think that's going to do a much better job of giving me the shape of what I wanted. I can then take this guy and extrude him. I'm just going to extrude him 0 and move him back to here, and that's going to start making the rest of this piece that's going to go around. So I'm going to have to move this one down as well, and I can see where the window is going to now have to fit. And then again, I've got a weird, bizarre little corner here that I'm going to have to fill in between these three pieces. So this is door and fender and windscreen that are going to kind of have to come together here, or come apart rather, in order to fix up this little hole. So I'm just going to go and grab the two vertices that I want here, and I'm going to move them up and over like so. And I should be able to just go and snap this one out here. And just move this one to match him to about there. Move this one out here too. So what's happened? This is the inner shape. And then I'm going to have to take these two and bring them out as well. And I think that's going to help give me the shape that I need. In fact, it may make a little bit more sense to remove this edge and add it in again in a moment. So I'm just going to remove this. What this is going to do is it's going to essentially make this one big shape here, which is going to allow me to line this up a little bit better. And then I can put that edge back in if it's even necessary. In fact, it might be a little bit more straightforward to just connect here. Okay. That works quite a bit better. In fact, I'm going to go into my Multicut tool now that I'm seeing this from fresh eyes here. I'm going to go into the Multicut tool and I'm going to add another connection in here, like so. And that is now going to allow me to place this guy in the right place. So I can see where there are the vertices that I need here. So if I go to Vert Snap and I grab this one, I can move it out here. That was the wrong one. Okay, let's deselect this guy. And if I do that, that should seal up everything nice and clean, with the exception of this one vertex right here that I think I'm just going to move to the end. Like that. So I'm just going to grab all my vertices here and do a quick merge, since there was a few uglies in here that needed correcting. I'm going to make sure this is all one piece again here, and it is, which is quite nice. I've got the windscreen, which is now actually connected to this other component, which I don't need it to be. I'm going to have to separate these things out as well. I've got the passenger window, or the driver's side window, which is its own component as well. In fact, one of the things that I can do with this is just move this edge back, like so. We'll do this in the side view here so I can see this, in order to capture the rest of the rear of the vehicle here. So I'm just going to move this thing back here. Now you can see it's truncated the roof a little bit. I'm not nearly as high up as I once was, or what the design looks like here, but it's adhering a little closer to what would make a little sense in the shape of this thing. So I'm just going to bring that guy back, like so. And these three vertices, which never actually went into the right place, it may actually just be a little easier to go into the multi-connect here and just go and connect these guys, or do a new cut across here. That's not right. Let's try that again. So put that one there. And that one can go there. And I'm just going to hit Control 1 here. No, maybe not. Hit Enter, and then Control 1. There we go. This is just going to allow me to make this last cut here. Without it being in the way. So I'm just going to move this guy down at an angle until he's in the right place. And move these two guys. up and in the right place. In fact, I'm going to bring them out here. And I'll move this one up and in the right place here. And we can just delete these ones. And now I'll be able to merge those two shapes together quite nicely. So if I grab this, and now I start to separate what I don't want to be a part of that. Ooh, this all got broken in here too. And go delete that. Excuse me. And again, I'm going to just ensure, let's do this in the front view, that these vertices here are nice and straight along X. This one needs to be zeroed out and brought up, essentially. Something like that. Okay, that'll straighten that out a little bit. And I'm now going to go and separate it. So first, I don't need this polygon, or these ones. In fact, I probably won't need that one either. And now, I'm going to double check what I have selected here. And edit mesh detach, followed by a separate. I can take this guy and duplicate him. Combine. This can be combined. And let's go and edit this now. So I can see here where I'm going to want to have another connection that I'll bring forward to here, and another connection that I'll bring forward to here, like this. Which is going to allow me to merge these things together. So if I delete this, now I go to target weld my vertices. You can see these are going by a very small margin here. But I'll move that over, move that over, move that over. Okay. That's going to give me a nice merger in there. And then I'm just going to go and collapse this edge to make it a single vertex here, so I don't have any wasted topology. And that's going to give me a pretty good chunk of this thing all as a single piece, which is quite nice. And if I duplicate it, before I duplicate it, let's go move our pivot point. So you can see where my pivot point is here. This is based off the original torus that I started with. And so I'm just going to turn the grid on so I can see this. I'm going to go to Edit Pivot. And I'm going to hold X to turn on my snapping. And I'll just snap him to there. That's now the origin. So if I go and duplicate this, it should give me the other side of the car, no problem. Which I'll just go and combine. And while I'm at it, we'll go and do a merge of the vertices here. Like so. So this is giving us the rear window and the front window as one piece of geometry. If I really need to, I can go and add a cut in between and separate them. But there's not much wrong with having this as one piece of geometry here. In terms of wasted topology, you know, you're kind of trading two things. If I were to put a new edge in between these two windows to separate them, that new edge would be two new vertices, which is more topology. And if I leave it the way it is, I'm going to end up with a little bit of window in behind that little border, which is wasted topology. So it's trading wasted topology for a different type of wasted topology. So I'm going to be okay with just leaving it the way that it is. I think that's going to work quite nicely, as a matter of fact. Okay, so that's coming together quite nicely. If I really wanted to here, I could go and duplicate the other portions of this thing that are where they should be here. I'm going to have to move the pivot down on that. But you can see we're starting to get a lot of this car body coming together here. I'm going to go and do some of the rear of this thing here as well. So this is going to be a fairly easy thing to do. I'm just going to grab these sets of edges here and bridge them across like that. Now I'm getting into a point here where my reference planes are going to be a detriment to my ability to model, and since I can't actually see the back of the car in the reference plane, I'm just going to go into my channel editor and turn the visibility of those things off for the time being. I'm going to have to turn them back on again at another point, but while working on the back of the vehicle here, there's not much point in having them there. I'm going to need to make, again, a little bit of an adjustment here to this thing in order to get the shape to be a little bit more accurate. So I'm just kind of flattening out some of these vertices here a little bit. In fact, I'm going to take the door here too, and I'm just going to flatten out every vertice along this line just to get them as perfectly planar as I can. Apparently I forgot that one. There we go. So something like that. This is going to give me the ability to take this edge, and it's right here, which there should be two of them. I just want to make sure that there are. I'm just going to move this out and pull this up here in order to start making, and I'm going to bridge those together, the rest of the back of this thing. And then I'll do the same thing here. So I'm going to go to my vertices here, and this guy can just come out a little bit further. And I'm going to grab these two edges and bring them out. And in terms of vertices, I'm going to go and target weld. Let's deselect vertices here. Target weld from here in and from here in. And then I can also go from here in and here in. And then I can bridge those, closing off the back of that point. So I'm now kind of at the point where the rear window would appear. I'm going to need to, this is obviously supposed to be round here. I've got a very square edge on here. And so one of the things that's going to make my life a little bit simpler, I'm just going to add a single connection here like this, followed by a delete of half of the car. Again, I can merge it back over again when I'm done, but this is just going to make my life a little bit simpler as I'm doing what I'm about to do. I won't have to try and match two complicated modeling areas here. I've just got one to kind of match. It probably would also have made sense to actually do this a little bit further in. So if you look at these two polygons here, they probably should line up with this edge here. So if I go find out where this edge is right now, let's go to the Move tool. This in X is at 3.04, and these guys are at 3.15. So I'm going to go to Edit Mesh and detach these, and type in that 04 to put them in the place where they should be. I'll then go in and target weld these back together. This is what the detach did, was broke them. In fact, I'm going to delete this polygon, and I'm going to have to make a new cut, like so, and target weld that guy over. And then I can, whoops, that's still target weld. And then I can just take these two and bridge them. Oh, that's odd. Okay, two at a time. Bridge. And bridge. Okay. I think that's going to work a little bit better. Let's hide my reference images again. Yeah, that'll be nice. So it just adds a little bit more continuity here. The next thing I want to do is round this out a little bit. Again, before I can do that, I should probably clean that up. And we'll run this all the way down. I'm going to see how this works if I do it like this. Something went screwball on me. Okay, so it didn't like that. So let's try it just with those two. It does not want to bevel. So it must mean there's a hole here somewhere. One vertex, one vertex, one vertex. Odd. Okay. Let's do it with just one then. So I'm going to give this 2 segments. I'm going to turn the fraction up here a little bit. And what I'm doing is I'm just trying to make this rounded as it goes around that corner. And yeah, I can absolutely see that something has gone terribly wrong here. Because that should not have happened. But I'm going to use my multi-cut to kind of fix this out here. So bring this down, and we'll just start tapering it in towards the inside here. And then on this side, I'm literally just going to bring it there. Turn this off. I can get rid of those extra edges now that weren't doing anything. And I'm going to go and multi-cut again. Just down in here. And again, get rid of the edge that I didn't want. And there, that looks a little bit cleaner now. Starting to give me a rounded shape going around that corner. While still kind of making the shape of the wheel well quite round. So that's quite nice. I'm going to bring back the reference images here again. And I'm going to need a rear trim going up. Which is going to eventually merge into this trim back here. So with this guy, we're just going to move this forward a little bit. I don't know where it's going to end up yet, but I know what it's going to be built out of, which is going to be these guys here. So it looks like I should also start bringing these things in like this. I'm just looking at the edge here where it matches the window or meets the window. And I should probably do something a little bit like that. I can see I'm going to have to trim the window here as well. But I think that's going to make a world of good. And I'm going to grab these two edges. I'll do this in my side view. And I'm just going to hold shift to extrude them up to about there. Again, I'm going to have to bring them in. The extrusion just brought them straight up. So if I bring them in here until they line up with this thing, I can already see exactly how that's going to fit together. That'll give me the shape of that rear panel here. Again, I'm going to have to go into the windshield, or the window, and can I bevel a vertice? I can. That's a good plan. So I'm just going to move this guy back again, like so. And yeah, that's going to work out quite nice. I might have to move it forward again to here. I can see where I'm going to need to snap these things together. Let's see. Let me do this. Okay. I can also now see where I'm going to get to make a rear window just by bringing this in, like so. This is going to give me the little inset where that rear window can go and kind of complete the box that is this shape here. So I think what I need to do is grab these vertices here, 253 and X, and then I'm going to grab these two, and let's start with this one, 2.53 in X. I want to move, not... Let's try that again. There we go. Something like that, and then if I get the height from this one and paste it in here. Bah. Like that, it should give me something a little bit more manageable. I'll find the X of this one, 2.39, and I'll set this one 2.39, and I'll find its height, .667, and I'll add it to this one. The nice thing about that is that I should now be able to target weld those two things together. So if I go to target weld now, this and this should go back there quite nicely, giving me a nice clean corner. It's also going to allow me to, if I isolate this object now, cancel, Control 1, and grab these vertices here, this one right here. So what I want to do is look at this from the front, and I can see where this actually should be in order to get that window nice and straight. It should be about there, which means I probably want to move this out too. Yeah, that's not too bad. I think I'm going to just do away with this one little vertice here. Zoom in on it. I don't think there's much point in having that long, skinny triangle polygon. So I'm just going to move this up. And in fact, I might move that one out as well. Okay, that's starting to look pretty decent. It's a nice clean corner. I think my initial assessment in bringing this in will have been wrong. You can see that it's now leaning in here. And I think the reason that it's wrong is that I think it definitely needs to come from here in terms of making this windshield make sense. And I'll show you why. Once I move this guy out and start target welding him into place. If I do that, and in fact move this one back here as well, that's going to give me the lip, the thickness that I need. So the windshield, or the window, should actually be against this inner lip. So this inner lip here is going to go up and around and end up connecting to that. And so I think that's going to be a much better place for that. Okay, so I'm going to get the Y position from this vertex, or sorry, the Z position, negative 4.01. And I'm going to put it into this one to line those up. This will give me the exact positioning I need to clean these two things up in the right way. Excuse me. All right. So grab this edge, and I'm going to bring it in, and then I'll go to vertices here, and again I'm going to target weld, and then target weld's going to go from here out, like so. I don't have a destination for this one. But I do have two edges now that can be bridged, here and here, and I'll bridge those, and that should clean up the frame around that rear window. These vertices here aren't really doing all that much, so I might as well clean them up. Let's bring them back here. This one doesn't want to target weld. Odd. Let's just delete it. Wait, how many vertices are there? Just one. Why are you not target welding now? Okay, let's target weld it this way. I should be able to remove this, and we're back to nice and clean again. Can probably take this vertex and move it back, and I'm going to connect here. Oops. Followed by removing this edge here. Okay. Something went wrong. Oh, how far back did that go wrong? I really don't like the target weld system in Maya. I don't like that if I have any vertices selected, that they are going to target weld themselves as well. It's very easy to miss that when you're working, to actually target weld something you never intended, and have it be so many undo steps ago that it's just something you don't even notice. And so I'd really rather not have that system. It is helpful to be able to target weld multiple vertices together, but to have it do things when you don't intend it to doesn't make a lot of sense. Okay, I think I've got that back again to where I was, which is decent. I believe with that, we'll call this video done, and I'll pick this up tomorrow and continue along with the low poly. adding some of the finer details, and then moving into the high poly. So, yeah, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next part.